Hello everyone. Today in this class we are going to learn an interesting story. This story tells us about a barber who is a very talkative person. One day, a sultan calls him for getting his head shaved. Instead of getting on with the job, he starts talking non-stop. The sultan is annoyed with this behavior. This story gives us the funny account that happens between the sultan and the barber. Let's see what happens in this lesson. Before we move on to the lesson, let's see some new words from this lesson. First one, chatterer. Someone who talks a lot. Usage. He is a chatterer and he often interrupts others. Here, interrupts means to stop something. Next new word is defect. Defect means a fault. Usage. This clock has a defect since it hasn't shown correct time. Next new word is opinion. It means what a person feels about a person, thing or subject. Usage. We should always have a high opinion of others. Fourth one, exhausted, meaning tired and fed up. Usage. He is exhausted after a long journey. Next new word is dessert. Dessert means a sweet dish served after the main meal. Usage. She wanted to eat ice cream for dessert. Next one is examine, meaning to look something very carefully. Usage. The doctor examined his eyes. Next new word is at length, meaning at a stretch. Another meaning is a long time. Usage. They were talking at length. The title of the story is The Talkative Barber. Long ago, a sultan whose name was Shahryar ruled over a large kingdom. His queen was a good storyteller. Each night she would tell a story to the king. She narrated ancient Persian and Arabic folk stories. This is one of the stories from the Arabian Nights. This introduction tells us that Shahryar, a sultan, who entertained himself by listening to the stories which was told by the queen each night. Here the word Arabian Nights refers to the collection of Persian, Indian and Arabian stories. The Arabian Nights includes the stories of familiar characters such as Aladdin and Ali Baba. Hope you might have been familiar with these stories like Aladdin and a Magic Lamp and Ali Baba and 40 Thieves. In today's class, let's learn the story of a barber who can't stop talking and how the Sultan annoyed with the behavior of the barber. Let's see in this lesson. In the city of Kashgar lived a barber who was a great talker. Once the Sultan called the barber to shave his head. The barber started talking non-stop instead of shaving him. The Sultan got angry. When are you going to stop talking and begin to explanation? This story tells us that a barber living in the city of Kashgar, everyone knows the barber is a great talker. A sultan calls him for getting his head shaved. As soon as the barber reaches the house of the sultan, instead of shaving his head, he starts talking non-stop. The sultan is now getting irritated and wants him to be done with his task quickly. Back to book reading. The barber replied, "You do me an injury by calling me a chatterer, for everyone says I'm very quiet. I have 6 brothers whom you might call chatterers. Their names are Bugbone, Bugburia, Bugbuk, Alcuse, Alnashi, and Shakabuk. One is humpbacked, one is toothless, one is off blind, one is quite blind, one is deaf, and the other has a defect in his speech, and they are all great talkers. But I am the youngest of my family, and I am very quiet and sparing with words." Explanation. The barber is a stubborn fellow and keeps on talking about something or the other. As the Sultan called him chatterer, the barber does not agree with it, and he starts to tell Sultan about his brothers. Even though they have defect in one way or the other, they are all very talkative. Further, he includes he is the youngest of his family, very quiet and doesn't talk much. Back to the reading. "Give him 3 pieces of gold," the Sultan cried, losing all patience, "and send him away. I will not be shaved today." Explanation. The barber does not even start to shave Sultan's head. So the Sultan gets fed up with his behavior and orders him to leave the house of the Sultan with a payment of 3 pieces of gold without getting his head shaved that day. Book reading. "My master," cried the barber, "it was not I who came to seek you, it was you who ordered me to come. So I will not quit your house till I have shaved you." He then began narrating another story which lasted half an hour. "Stop making your fine speeches and let me go quickly. I have an affair of the greatest importance. I have to go out at noon," said the Sultan. As the barber is invited by the Sultan for this job, he does not agree to leave the house of the Sultan till he finishes his job. Sultan is not at all happy with his talkative nature, but he is not able to stop the talking of the barber. As it is the nature of the talkative barber, he can't help it. And then he begins to narrate another story which takes half an hour for him to finish it. Again Sultan starts to tell him angrily to stop his talkative nature, as he is in a hurry to go out at noon to do something important. Book reading. When he saw that the Sultan was really angry with him, the barber said, "Oh master, do not be angry, I will begin to shave you." Saying this, he washed the Sultan's head and began to shave. But he had not touched him even 4 times with a razor when he stopped and said, "My master, you are acting hastily in this matter. Go on shaving me. Speak no more," ordered the Sultan. Explanation. As the Sultan starts getting angrier, the barber decides to start shaving. But the barber stops again and asks the Sultan the reason for his hastiness. But the Sultan does not disclose why he is in a hurry. Book reading. "Be patient," said the barber. "Perhaps you have not considered well what you are going to do. I wish you would tell me what this matter of great importance is all about, and then I will give you my opinion on it." "Finish shaving at once," the Sultan exclaimed. But instead of doing this, the barber left the Sultan half-shaved to go and see what time it was. "My patience is exhausted," The Sultan cried, "Be calm, my master, and you shall be shaved in a moment," said the barber. And saying this, he continued shaving the Sultan. But while he was doing this, he could not help talking. Explanation. Even though the barber requests many times, the Sultan does not tell him why he is in such a hurry. However, the barber stops halfway and goes out to check the time. At this time, he leaves the Sultan's head half shaved and comes back to resume. But again, he can't help talking. Back to the reading. "If you could inform me what this important affair is, I would give more advice, which you might find useful," he said. The Sultan was completely fed up by now and decided to satisfy the barber. He told him that he was giving a feast to some friends at noon, which was why he was in a hurry to leave. Explanation. We learn that the Sultan does not disclose to barber why he is in a hasty manner, as he requests many times. To get rid of him, Sultan tells him that he is inviting his friends over for a feast at noon. That's why he needs to go urgently. Back to the reading. When the barber heard the Sultan mention a feast, he exclaimed, "That reminds me, yesterday I invited 4 or 5 friends to come to my house today, but I had quite forgotten it and have not made any preparations for them." The Sultan, who was at the mercy of the barber, was ready to do anything to be rid of him. "Be quick and finish your work," the Sultan replied, "and you shall have all the food that has been prepared for me today." Explanation. On hearing this, the barber realizes he too invited his friends but has not made any preparations for them. Now, to do away with him, the Sultan offers him all the food that are being prepared for the feast to him for feeding his friends. Back to the reading. "Please show me the food so that I may judge if it is enough for my 5 friends. I have enough food for you," the Sultan exclaimed, but he ordered that all the food prepared for his feast be brought in. The barber looked over the food and said, "This is very good, but I shall want some fruit for the dessert also." The Sultan, in desperation, since his head was half shaved, ordered that the fruits should also be brought in. Explanation. Then the barber wastes much time in inspecting all the dishes which the Sultan offers to him. But the barber wants fruits for the dessert also. Since the Sultan's head is half shaved, he also agrees to offer fruits to him. Back to the reading. The barber left off shaving the Sultan to examine each dish separately. This took up half an hour. The Sultan stamped his feet impatiently, but the barber did not hurry. At length, however, he again took up the razor, but after a few minutes of work, stopped suddenly and said, "I never knew that you were so generous." Explanation. As you learn that the Sultan is getting restless, he agrees to fulfill every wish of the talkative barber. The barber again leaves the Sultan's half-shaved head and goes to inspect each dish. It takes half an hour for him. Meanwhile, the Sultan gets restless. After the barber is content, he starts shaving his head again and exclaims that he was not aware the Sultan was so generous. But indeed, the Sultan is ready to offer anything to the barber in order to get rid of him. This story gives us a funny account of the exchange that happens between the Sultan and the Barber. Hope you all enjoyed the story. Moral of the story is we should not be talkative. Instead, we have to focus on our job. Otherwise, people will get annoyed with us easily, like the Sultan in the story. Happy learning. Thanks for watching.